We're going to start our look at the Mycenaean, not in the capital of Mycenae, but just south of it at the city called Tiryns. All right, so let's head over there. This is the center of the city, or I should say Citadel of Tiryns. What? Miss Cortez just looks like a bunch of rocks. Yeah, okay. Do you remember the term citadel? If you don't, here, write it down again. There it is. Citadel, a fortress that commands a city and is used in control of the inhabitants and in defense during attack or siege. If it sounds familiar, it's because you and I learned about the citadels when we were looking at the ancient Near East culture, specifically the Assyrians. Now, similar to the Assyrians, the Mycenaeans were a war-based society. They were a society that ruled with force, with violence, and that is how they rapidly gained control over such a large expanse of territory. As a militaristic, forceful, violent, warlike culture, their art and architecture is going to be reflective of that. The architecture is this citadel here at Tiryns. We are looking at the rubble remains of the citadel. The citadel was originally on top of this rocky outcrop. So you can see just through the landscape beyond that there is a fairly low plain or valley, and then this rise of stone. That's a natural formation on the land, and the Mycenaeans took advantage of that rise in stone to build their palace. I know what you're thinking. The Minoans did that too, Miss Cortez. The Minoans did, but the Minoans didn't line their palace with 20-foot walls, 20-foot thick walls. That's what the Tiryns citadel had. Let's get a little bit more perspective. This is a reconstruction of the citadel of Tiryns. And what we're seeing here is we were standing on this side of the mountain, and now we're standing on the opposite side. So we're standing over here now. We were standing over here. Now with the reconstruction, we're standing on this side. In this reconstruction, what we see is the 20-foot thick walls. Yeah, those are 20-foot thick walls that line the citadel. There is only one main entrance into the citadel, and it's on this side. That's a significant thing because think about exits and entrances. I know, come on, you've watched action movies, spy movies. You always have to know where your exits and entrances are, right? Minimal entrances and exits mean minimal risk of invasion. So there's only one main entrance up here, and that controls who comes in, like your enemies. They can't come in here. There is a small courtyard, nothing like the big courtyard that we saw at the Palace of Knossos. Here is another view of the the citadel at Tiryns. So here we are looking, that's the main entrance, this dotted line here. So that's this series of gates here. There's a stepped ramp that is lined on either side by the thick citadel walls. And there are breaks in the ramp where gates are located. These gates can be locked from the top of the citadel walls to therefore prohibit people from entering into the citadel. The gates are also narrow compared to the hall or the ramp. This is significant as well. I'll talk about that significance in a little bit. So here we go into the courtyard. Now, we're not going to be looking at the reconstructions of the interior space, but the interior space served as the royal residence and administration for the local king of the land. Here, look at that's the secret back entrance. So you either go out this way or you come and go this way. These types of citadels are dotted throughout the Mycenaean world or Mycenaean lands, and they were ruled by minor kings who served the central king in Mycenae. The preservation of their road system shows that these smaller kings and their smaller citadels all interconnect and meet at Mycenae. So the citadel at Tiryns is most likely a minor lord or king who has served or controlled the surrounding landscape, but also served loyalty to the king at Mycenae. Here we are looking at the base of the citadel. These are those 20-foot walls I was talking to you about. They're insane, aren't they? Look at that. This is the ramp. This is that stepped ramp. Now, these 20-foot walls would stretch up and there would be guards on either side. And as you would walk into a gate, well, you'd have to get permission from the guards above you. The heavy blocked stones that they used to construct their citadels were so massive and impressive that we have given them a vocabulary term. Well, technically the Greeks did it. What do you mean, Miss Cortez? Okay. The vocabulary term is called Cyclopean masonry. All right? Cyclopean masonry. Cyclopean means it was made by Cyclops. Who's Cyclops? Cyclops is a one-eyed Greek giant or mythical giant that the Greeks had. So the Greeks had all these different fantastical creatures, and there was this one type of creature called a cyclops, and it was a big, disgusting giant with one eye. Not two, but one. Cyclops have one eye, and a cyclops was known as this lumbering, dangerous fool. You get it? He's single-sided, single-minded. He doesn't have two eyes. He can't think logically. He is a single-minded individual. The reason that we call this Cyclopean masonry. Masonry means stonework, okay? Cyclopean, made by Cyclops stonework. It refers to these big boulders because, spoiler alert, the Mycenaeans fall. And when the Greeks flourish, Mycenaean culture is already gone. And similar to when they went onto the island of Crete and they found the Minotaur myth, they went over to these citadels and they're like, how in the world did these people build these things? These stones are huge. They couldn't have done this. This must have been built by Cyclops. Those giants. It must have been Cyclops that did this. So the Greeks give this term for this massive, heavy blocks, Cyclopean masonry. This is really interesting because not Cyclops, he obviously didn't do it, but Cyclopean masonry, because it's so big, it can be extremely intimidating. And that is what they would want. If you were an invading enemy, you come up this ramp and you see giant stones being put up to make these walls, you're going to wonder and worry about the strength of the men who live in this citadel. You're going to wonder if you can even make it out alive, or you'll be crushed by their stones. So Cyclopean masonry really adds an element of intimidation or threat to their structures. Now let's walk into, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. Okay, we were just hanging out here. Let's walk into this smaller inner court, or this outer courtyard here. But to do that, now again, I want you to use your imagination. you're going to be the invading enemy coming up this ramp. And most humans tend to be right-handed. So you're going to have your weapon in your right hand and a shield in your left hand. And let's say there's an invading force of 500 of you. You can easily take this citadel down. As you come up to this intimidating Cyclopean masonry and you charge up this ramp, you are at a disadvantage, even though there are 500 of you. Why? Because they are no fools. They have created a ramp that requires you to pass through with your weapon against a wall. Do you know what I mean? If we're mostly going to be right-handed, as we walk up this, we're going to be curving and our sword is going to hit a giant rock wall. And then above you are guards who can easily drop rocks on you, or boiling water, or flaming oil. And then let's just say you're lucky enough to get up to the gate. Each gateway narrows. So there are 500 of you, but as you go through, you have to narrow your width to maybe 4 or 5 of you. But then you get to the gate, and the gate is narrowed till you have to go 2 at a time. 2 at a time? 2 at a time means that they can wait on the other side of that gate and just shoot arrows at you and just pluck you out. So your 500 men are reduced to 2 at a time. They're genius. They're genius. They're thinking of everything. Now let's say you've made it to that inner courtyard. How about this? How about you're an invited guest? So you don't have to fight your way up. Let's go hang out in this inner courtyard. I want to show you a system of building technology. Here we are. So we're standing inside of the inner courtyard. And, sorry, I have to scroll again because I didn't emphasize it before. We're going to stand under here. See these little dots? We're going to stand right under that pathway. We're going to stand right here, okay? Here we are. So those are the dots that you were just seeing. This is your next artwork. This is called the Corbelled Gallery inside of Tiryns Citadel. Now the reason I bring your attention to this is because, one, I want you to use the vocabulary term for that large brickwork. What was it? Cyclopean masonry. Good, you see that. And then the covering or the ceiling of this space is a type of architecture, and it's your next vocabulary term. Corbelled arch and vault. Corbel, arch, and vault. Corbelling is the main element of this term. Corbelling is when blocks or bricks are cantilevered inward until they meet in a pointed arch. Miss Cortez, I'm totally confused. Okay. Here we go. Here's an example of a corbel arch. Corbelling, when blocks or bricks are cantilevered inward. Cantilevered means you meet it in without falling. It's the same thing that you do with your Legos. Think about if you want to make an archway with your Legos. You use your bricks and you just push them a little bit and a little bit and a little bit until they meet in the middle. You were just doing corbelling with your Legos or Lego. So you got our corbel. Bop, bop, bop. When you do this one row, you make an arch. If you were to do it again and again and again right next to each other, say we make our corbelled arch, and then if you were to do it again and again and again and again and again and again, then you're making a tunnel, or more specifically, You're making a vault. So an arch is singular and a vault extends. And that is the technology that we're seeing here. Those blocks, those Cyclopean masonry brick blocks of stone have been brought together. So that's the technology of building that we're seeing here. The other term I want to emphasize, and it's really just so that you don't get confused, is the word gallery. Now, when we say gallery, sometimes we think of, well, like a museum gallery. Is that what we're talking about? Or what? Well, a gallery is a long room or passage that is typically open on one side to form some kind of a porch or portico or colonnade. I know I'm giving you lots of vocabulary terms, and I apologize, but we will start to work through all of these terms throughout the semester. So when we use the gallery, we're not talking about going to a museum and checking out the artworks in a gallery. We're talking about the structure itself. It usually has one wall, and then one side is open with windows or doors, or in this case, there are just columns that are open to the exterior. So this in total is a corbelled gallery. I know. Now you're going to sound so smart. It's going to be so impressive.